Welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Today, once again, we're taking a look at what is happening within the Congress. Of course, you may well ask me that this is election time. There are elections in 5 assembly states. Why are we so bothered about the Congress? Because precisely that is the reason why we are bothered about the Congress. Because there are elections in 5 states. There's an election in Uttar Pradesh, the biggest state in the Hindi heartland. And the Congress is not a player. The Congress is the principal opposition party. Anything that happens in the national narrative will have to do a lot to do with how the Congress shapes itself, which is why we've seen a whole lot of comings and goings in Uttar Pradesh. We've seen Congress leaders leave the party and join the Samajwadi Party. Most have joined the BJP. We've seen BJP leaders leave and join the Samajwadi Party. But no one is joining the Congress. Why is the Congress such a political untouchable, despite the fact that we are told attempts are being made, course corrections are happening? We've seen some of that happening in Punjab, but it doesn't seem to be having a domino effect on other states and not on the national narrative. That is something I'm going to be discussing today with my panel, a panel of experts and people who know what is happening within the Congress. We have Rashid Kadwai, he's the author of 24 Akbar Road. Dilip Cherian, he's a political commentator and image maker. Tehseem Poonawala, he's a Congress sympathizer, supporter and a legal brain. And Sanjay Jha, he's a suspended Congress leader, someone who's really been tapping into the discontent within the Congress and speaking about it also. He's still with the Congress, though the Congress, I don't know whether the Congress is still with him or not. But Rashid, of course, the immediate catalyst for this conversation is RPN Singh joining. He's another one of what we used to call Rahul's Camelot. People who were Team Rahul, Jitin, Sindhya, RPN, Sushmita. What is happening in the Congress and how do you see RPNs going?
I think several things, Priya. First of all, there is a template. People who are close to Rahul Gandhi, who are considered as members of Team Rahul, people who are, young, dynamic, second generation, third generation, people who have been kind of, given a lot of responsibilities in BJP's scheme of things. They were kind of, elitists, had a sense of entitlement. They are leaving Congress because of, one can argue, that sheer opportunism. Second thing, more important, they think कि राहुल गांधी की कांग्रेस में नहीं चल रही है. In that sense, it's a very significant thing in a political party. It seems, and it's not a personal thing, that Rahul Congress and Sonia Gandhi Congress has been at at cross purpose. And as long as Ahmed Patel was around, he could accommodate both stream, and somehow it was happening. Mr. Rahul Gandhi politically is being clever by half. He is doing whatever he wants to do, and when it comes to taking responsibility, ownership, or siding by his colleagues, he says, "You see, I'm nobody. I'm just a member of parliament and all that." So a lot of politics is happening in a political party internally, and I think the Congress is paying a price. Secondly, see, after any debacle, it's logical for party to split. The Congress has did not split after 2014, 2019. As I keep saying, it's a group of people who are happy to be unhappy. So it's a long list. BJP, had it not been a Maurya episode, maybe RPN would not have got a chance. We know that for last 2 years he was unhappy. He was kind of pulled up, humiliated, whatever you call it. And CWC, Sonia Gandhi often spoke to his mother to to keep him around. Now this is a level of maneuvering that was taking place. So whenever BJP wants, I'm very reluctant to say it, but Priya, it's a stark truth. Whoever they want, they can pick and choose in the Congress. That's the thing. Congress has become like a commodity.
What I got from Rashid's comments is that there is a lack of leadership. Rahul Gandhi is there, but not quite there. So he may pull up RPN when he wants to, but when it comes to damage control, the mother has to step in. So it all comes down to that crucial leadership question, doesn't it, Dilip?
I think there's more to this, and I want to just extend the point that Rashid made. Rahul ki nahi chalti hai. I think it's not just that. It is that Rahul wants to convey the image that I am not the supremo, because I am not the elected supremo and I am only the member of parliament, etc. The dissatisfaction is with the Rahul brigade precisely because he seems to not be able to bludgeon them into the positions in the party, and there are very few positions in the party that matter, where they want to be. But RPN doesn't have that complaint in that sense, because after all, he was looking after a very important state. He was general secretary. He was playing a major role at the AICC. I think that the stars kind of aligned. And most of you who know RPN will understand why I'm saying the stars aligned. The stars aligned very well for him with the departure of Maurya, with the intensity of the Kurmi versus Rajput versus, all those new caste powers which are in play as far as Uttar Pradesh is concerned. And he also wanted to tactically make sure that while he was joining, he wanted to remain a aspirant for play at the center rather than at the state. All of this came together, and I think that as far as the Congress was concerned, please understand that they were putting pressure on him to campaign from to stand from Kushinagar. Now, don't forget that Kushinagar has just become also an airport. So everybody's ambitions and aspirations are soaring. And certainly standing from Kushinagar would not have been the kind of dream that RPN would be looking at. So I think that it's in imagery terms, RPN wanted something that fits. He wasn't getting that in the Congress. His compatriots, his brigade were telling him that Rahul is not going to stand firm for you in any way. Though from what I understand internally, Rahul was quite willing to see him not fight. And that was also creating a level of dissension within the party. I'll stop here for the moment.
That stars aligning, you left out one name, that is Jyotiraditya Scindia, whom RPN is very close to and who's gone to the BJP also. But Tehsim, RPN may well fight from Kushinagar. It all makes a whole difference if you're fighting on a BJP ticket or you're fighting from a Congress ticket. I spoke to somebody from the G23 and he said it's okay, not for G23, but somebody who left the Congress, one of RPN's predecessors. And he told me that it's okay, to be a congressman from Punjab, but it's a whole different ballgame to be a congressman from Uttar Pradesh. That's suicidal, So it's a lot to do with the party also.
Adi, on such a very happy belated Republic Day to you, to all my panelists, and to all your viewers, and maybe always strive to be the constitutional democracy that our forefathers envisaged us to be. And just taking Dilip's point a little forward, when Dilip said stars aligned, one of the stars that he meant aligned was Jyotiraditya Scindia, I think. That was the shining star that aligned. But jokes apart, let me just come to two quick points that I want to make. Priya, very often the Congress, and rightly so, is criticized for people leaving the Congress. And the Gandhis are very often in spotlight, questions are raised about their leadership, and rightly so. We're in a democracy, that should be asked. But I never see the same level of scrutiny about the BJP when Yashpal Arya leaves a sitting minister, or a Hark Singh Rawat, a sitting minister, quits and does not have the confidence to contest on a BJP ticket. And then, they're coming towards the Congress. A number of MLAs in Uttarakhand have come to Congress. Number of MLAs in Goa have come. Michael Lobo, sitting minister, cabinet minister, has come again. And we know in Karnataka what is happening, and everybody is dissatisfied with Bomai, and they're all talking to Congress, and Siddaramaiah has come on record and said that is never a reflection of Amit Shah ji, Narendra Modi ji, or Nadda ji's leadership, but it's always a reflection of Rahul Gandhi ji's leadership. In Ajay Mishra Teni's cases, a number of cases were filed on me. Of course, they had to withdraw it. Police complaints were filed. When I first tweeted the video of him driving over the farmers, until that video was verified, and Priyanka had also tweeted that video, number of cases were filed. How many of these people were on the ground? How many went with Priyanka Gandhi to get arrested?
How many took the lathis? There seems one of the reasons why one of these guys left the Congress is they said Priyanka was there when the agitation was happening with the buses, when the migrants were doing lockdown. She was there in Hathras. But where is she now when the elections are actually happening?
She's very much in Delhi. Every day,
the elections are in
yesterday she was in Delhi because there was a North Indian Uttar Pradesh Sammelan that happened in Delhi. And you know that there's a code of conduct. You cannot have mass rallies. So she had that. She met, in fact, an Bhojpuri actress is joining Congress today. So she's very much there. She sorted that out. Number two, the number of virtual rallies are happening. The Congress is working on the ground. And I'm saying Congress is going to surprise. So Priyanka is absolutely hands-on. And she's come on front, taken taken responsibility and said it's her face on the posters. But to come and continuously say, look, we want that if the party comes to power, we are in the union cabinet, we are in the front row, but when there are agitations, we won't be there. We rightly agree the Congress is a weak force. Why aren't you on the ground fighting? This was the same criticism, Priya, you made. The Congress is not on the ground fighting. Today, when the Congress is on the ground fighting, those who are not there are still the ones who are leaving. Are still the ones who are blaming the Congress. What more can Priyanka Gandhi do? She fought. She's on the ground.
That's a good point. Let me get Sanjay in also. Sanjay, Tessim's point is right. These guys want to be there when UPA is in power. They don't want to be there when the UPA is out of power.
One of the big challenges for the Congress is to keep its flock together. You see, you're up against the BJP, which is in power in the center, which is in power in several states. They have, investigating agencies with them. They raise 95% of the electoral bond money goes to them. They've got leaders who get free airtime. So you have a very lopsided, skewed battle. Now, to try and make this asymmetrical battle more of a level playing field, your only option is to get your team as hungry as hopefully the leadership is. And I think that's where the Congress is probably not being smart. You know what I would have done, Priya? I would have made sure that every person who fought the Lok Sabha election for the Congress in 2019 and 14 and lost the election, I would have told all of them, you will be fighting the MLA election. Because you see, you got to keep your people busy. And, this is not about some kind of an ego or, status problem. I have been a member of parliament. How can I fight an MLA election? That's ridiculous. Keep your team busy, give them goals, let them go for it. And you send out a message that you are there in the game for the long haul. I think the Congress here misses an opportunity. I agree, because I know I can tell you this with some degree of personal confidence. Priyanka Gandhi Vadra has worked very hard in the last 6 months to a year to try and resurrect the Congress. You can always say, what was the Congress doing earlier? I agree with you. But at the moment, there is a narrative. She's worked hard. I think the Congress at last is able to get some kind of a visibility that it never had before. The results probably may not be able to do justice to the effort, because we all know it is too late in the day to probably swing it significantly. But I do feel that the Congress is losing an opportunity, and RPNC may or may not be a heavyweight. But the truth is, in a time when BJP has an advantage, you have just made it a lot easier for them.
Priya, just 1 second. Just 1 second. I just want to tell Sanjay that maybe a couple of ex-MPs were asked to contest. Maybe perhaps that's the reason they were talking on wanting to go. Maybe a couple of them were asked to contest. And I know one of the ex-MPs who I was in touch with requesting him to contest, and he flatly refused. So I can tell you this for a fact.
No, I think this should be like a whip. This should be like a whip. You don't get a choice.
Well, if they're the BJP,
well, they have the stars aligning. They have the stars aligning. What choice do they give them?
Stars aligning. We're going to take a break and come back. And I know Rashid wanted to come in after the short break. We're here discussing what is happening in the Congress. Too many people leaving and not too many people joining. Rashid, I know you wanted to come into what Sanjay is saying. And I also have a question for you. First, you come in, then I'll ask you.
I think, Priya, what I wanted to say is that we can go on debating all this theoretical aspect. There are some very practical things that the Congress is avoiding, or there are, problems. Many of them, like me and Priya, that, on the issue of that, whether in the State Assembly, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's name should be raised or not. In one of the meetings, RPN Singh made that point, and with a great kind of bravado, he said that in Jharkhand, in the 18 meetings and all, they did not name Narendra Modi, and that's how they were successful. And Mr. Rahul Gandhi objected. It's not a personality thing. No, this is something the Congress should talk about it. Or the Article 370, or issue of Kashmir, nationalism. There are many things. Issue of having a nationwide ban on cow slaughter. After all, Indira Gandhi had proposed. She had set up a commission that had Guruji Golwalkar also as a member. But there's a lot of history. The Congress is not able to talk about these things, so that the leaders get a sense of confidence. As I say, opportunism is one thing. Then you have, individuals like me and who are very close aides of Priyanka Gandhi. They act as a gatekeeper. They are extreme left of center. They mock and ridicule people. I know, as a kind of person who has covered Congress, it was always Dhawan, Fotedar, Winston George. They were blamed for whatever Indira Gandhi or Rajiv Gandhi were doing or not doing. But if there is an individual called Sandeep Singh, and if he is posing problems and people are, giving it writing, now this issue needs to be discussed and deliberated. So the Congress on the pragmatic side is also missing a lot of opportunities.
That's true, Dilip. The fact that, what Rashid is saying, there has to be a narrative and a system in place, which the Congress doesn't have, which Indira Gandhi had, even Sonia Gandhi had, and Ahmed Patel. So is Rahul being he's shortchanging himself by distancing the older guard, people who could help him do this damage control?
Well, we've discussed this, or hinted at it, that the departures have been from the so-called Rahul Brigade, and the so-called troublemakers, i.e. G23, haven't seen any departures, unless you count Jitin as a G23 person, but he's more a Rahul Brigade. Now, I think that this is actually a situation of what I would call inheritor impatience. And many of these powerful inheritors are not only entitled, but they don't realize that their entitlement can simply not be fulfilled in the current political situation in which the Congress finds itself. So what is the option? I think Sanjay has hinted at a very interesting idea that insists that every MP who has lost fights an MLA election. But, many of them are also deeply conscious of the fact that they won their MP elections because of a wave, not because of something that they have created in terms of a connect with the ground, except for a handful of people who have left, who have sizable followings. Scindia is a good example, but many others are just not able to have the confidence that they can pull off what it requires to win an MLA election. And therefore, the humiliation will be even more, especially given the people who are guarding the gates at both Rahul's establishment as well as Priyanka's. So the slighting that happens post your trying is also something they're extremely fearful about. Have they tried? No. Are they scared of trying? Yes. This fear of flying is what is actually creating the hope that I must go somewhere where the wave will take me through. And the wave is what I want to harness. Many of them have realized that, but the fact is that during the last waves, the Congress spent a lot of its energy on the inheritors rather than grooming a new generation of leaders who would be loyal to the party and who belonged to an ideology. And that, I think, is the mistake that must not be repeated. And perhaps, some of the, selections or deselections or whatever is going on is a sign of that happening, where they don't want to make the mistakes of the past and want to try and create a new structure. It will be painful. Will it work? We don't know. Do elections matter? Of course they matter. And therefore, the showing will also matter in UP and in other states.
That's very interesting. In fact, that's the question I wanted to quickly ask Rashid before I bring in Tehseen Poonawala. Is this narrative of, promoting dynasty? Now they're saying, we gave them so much on a platter, we promoted these dynasts, and look what they do when they're out of power. But that was a narrative that was set to showcase Rahul Gandhi. This was the background. There were pedigrees of privilege, but they also had good professional background. There was a Harvard, there was Stanford, there was, Stephens, Doon. This was the professional privilege that Rahul Gandhi wanted to give as part of his Canadian charm, and he was going to be the center, and there would be, the black felt behind him while he shone like the diamond. But unfortunately, he didn't step up. He just didn't appear and put himself in the showcase. And that is when that narrative began to go horribly wrong. That has been the Congress culture. You can say whatever, but that dynasty, that privilege, that name, surrounded by, people, they trust their own Camelot, was what was working for Congress. When Rahul Gandhi did not step up to the script, that failed, and Narendra Modi saw a chance to bring in another script, that of the Aam Aadmi. So the failure can be traced to there. Or am I wrong, Rashid?
No, you're absolutely right, Priya, because the middle class, I call it white collar, they are more image conscious. They want to see how they are placed, not only now, but from 10 years from now, etc. They go by it. And unfortunately, Rahul Gandhi has learned nothing from life of Rajiv Gandhi. Rajiv Gandhi made the same mistake. What Sitaram Kesri used to famously say, these are people who are, Harvard used to say Harvard, leading Congress towards R. So, towards defeat. So that kind of Harvard culture still continues. And this is what, Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi, they are actually very utterly confused about what they want to do. They did not make Jagan chief minister because they thought next time, every time a Congress chief minister dies, his son would or daughter would say wants to be chief minister. But tell me, who would believe that Congress did not make Jagan because of that, they didn't want to perpetuate dynasty.
Teslim, your take on the same question of, did the Congress change the dynasty script midway? Did Rahul suddenly decide, I don't want to, he suddenly gave all these comments like, I want to change the whole narrative, I want elections, I want democracy. But we all know in the end where that led to.
No, but the elections happened, from what I recollect, in 2009, 2010. It didn't happen midway during it. I remember the Youth Congress elections happened at that point, and that was an idea that refreshingly everybody in media was gung-ho about. Now we are going to blame Rahul Gandhi for trying to introduce a democratic system into the Congress, when all along in 2008, 2009, 2010, the whole criticism of the Congress is it's not a democratic party. I mean, hindsight can always.
As such, no, it was on paper. We know what's happening on ground. If you have this election, Rahul Gandhi is back again. It's between the family.
No, we're talking about the Youth Congress elections, because that's what he specifically asked me. He said he brought in these elections.
I asked you, Youth Congress elections also chose dynasty, but that's the other issue. The issue is that there was a script when Rahul should have stepped up and become part of the narrative. He didn't. He just decided to do his own thing. And that's when the downfall began. If he had done... You're talking about the Anna agitation. I'm talking about UPA 1. I'm talking about the fact that he didn't want to be part of the government. I'm talking that the fact that because he was not part of the government, Sindhya, Pilot, Milind Deora were not able to be promoted more than just ministers of states because
no. Manish Tiwari was independent charge. Jyotir had independent charge. Yeah, but they did have independent charge. You can't have, look, the Congress has one problem, or it had one problem. It had a problem of plenty of talent. How do you say, for example, that a Jyotir Aditya, with whom I have a lot of respect, will suddenly be made a cabinet minister without having any experience as MOS state? You would be the first to criticize it.
Given the experience, and then
they became independent. So he became independent. Manish became independent. Now let me ask a reverse question, and I'm going to say this about my friend Manish, because Manish is in the BJP, is in the Congress, and he's very close.
Not yet. He hasn't, unless you know something.
Not yet. No, not yet. But he's very close. He was independent charge media. How did the media treat the Congress? How much fake news was put when the Congress was in government? Let me ask this very specific question. I'm going to be very brutally honest. I'm not asking media can be controlled, I'll never say that. But I am asking you, as INB minister, when fake stories after fake stories on the UPA, a complete narrative against the UPA, on so-called scams that absolutely did not exist, in which the courts have given a clean chit, came out, how many meetings did the information and broadcasting minister have to clarify? You're today talking about performance? Let's ask these questions. Let's ask a question: who, as minister, ran away and did not contest what election? Let's ask those questions and went in and spoiled another seat. See, baat jayegi to bahut dur tak jayegi.
If there is a leadership in you have left the whole the government is shown in a bad light, that is Manmohan Singh's problem. I will come and tear up the ordinance because that's not my problem. I'm the party, you're the government. It's your government. Why don't you own it? And then tell Manish why you're not doing what needs to be done.
I'm not saying that the UPA did not make mistakes. I'm absolutely not saying that. They have made mistakes. I'm saying that, I'm admitting that the UPA made mistakes. They made some fundamental mistakes. I absolutely agree with it. First, starting with giving extra importance to Anna Hazare. Why the hell did they give him importance? I absolutely agree with you. But having said that, today, the mistakes of the UP are being blamed on Rahul Gandhi is absolutely unfair. Let's look at today what's happening in 2020, 2021, 2022. Rahul Gandhi has been on the ground. He's tried to reorganize the party. As Dilip said, he's tried to bring in a structural change into the party, try to bring in people who can fight, try to bring in outsiders. Priyanka's done that on a micro level in Uttar Pradesh. They are trying to bring about structure, but even then they are being criticized for what is not being delivered. I want to ask one question, one fundamental question. Of all these leaders, whether G23 or these young leaders, how many of them came to Bihar to campaign? How many of them came to UP to campaign? How many of them went to any of these states to campaign? Let's ask this question. I went to Bihar with my resources and work. Let's talk names. Ghulam Nabi Azad Sahab, how much did he go to Bihar? Did he go to Bihar?
Well, Priya, I can tell you that the only thing that the Congress needs to understand is this. In 1985, it had an absolute majority in Uttar Pradesh Assembly with 265 seats. You're now being told almost 30 odd years later by Akhilesh Yadav that you might get 0 seats. The question that the Congress leadership has to answer is, if you lost power in the 1989-90 election, after 30 years, you are expected to get 0? I mean, in the next 5 years, you should be bouncing back. It takes.
What about the fact that none of the G23 are campaigning? You named a star campaigner one day, you leave the next day. In Bihar, none of them went. That's a good point that Tehsim raised.
Well, Priya, let me tell you something. Organizations cannot be built on singular events like an election. Everybody here on this panel I have huge respect for. Organizations are built brick by brick, day after day. The Congress's mistake is a sporadic, extremely spike-led behavior. You can't suddenly show up in an election campaign and expect to win the votes. I've always told this to people whom I know in the Congress. Travel across the country when there is no election. People remember those people who come to them when there is no actually quid pro quo. You think people are very, very intelligent enough to know that these guys only come to us when they need seats. It applies to the BJP equally, by the way.
Priyanka has been doing that to be fair to us.
I'll just take 10
I'm
seconds.
totally out of time, Tehsim. Otherwise,
Just 10 seconds. Just 10 seconds. How many of these so-called big leaders, forget the elections, came on the street for all the agitations against CA, for the students, for Hathras, for Unnav? How many of them got dandas? How many of them went to jail? How many of them were there?
Jitin Prasad, Sushmita, they were there.
Why were they given so-called notice? I mean, this is also Congress leadership failure.
That I agree with you.
Why
That I agree
let
with
them to act?
I absolutely agree with
action
you.
was taken against Sharpin Singh.
On
अब
that
मैंने
note,
कहा ना, बात जाएगी तो बहुत दूर तक जाएगी.
on
बात
that
जाएगी
note,
तो राहुल तक जाएगी.
Rahul tak jayegi. That is the thing. The buck does stop with Rahul, good or bad. But that's it. Thank you for this very interesting discussion and a pretty candid one at that. And we'll see you again next week. Thank you for this show.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.